Welcome, everyone. This is the Bourbonr live review. This is in the Bourbonr Facebook group. And tonight I'm reviewing Driftless Glen. It is called the first marriage rye. And so this is a little bit of a different barrel pick. This is something special. So there's a group out of kind of the Virginia, DC, Maryland area. It's called the Mid-Atlantic Whiskey Lovers Society, and so they do a lot of barrel picks. They have a lot of members that are in another more prominent group as well called 1789B, and so they do a lot of picks, and we've run some of their picks through Seelbach. So this is one where they were picking out a rye barrel from Driftless Glen and ended up they kind of blended a couple barrels together and like, wow, this is really good. And so luckily Driftless Glen was very accommodating and allowed them to go ahead and bottle it with a blend of two barrels. So on the side, it says this is something that just describes it. It says this bespoke bottling represents the marriage of two unique barrels, number 335 and 413, which when united create a truly magnificent expression of how good a rye whiskey can be. So if you're not familiar with Driftless Glen, they are out of Wisconsin. It's Baraboo, Wisconsin. And they're a, it's one of those ones, we call it craft, but it's more than craft. They're distilling on a column still. Now, granted, it's not as large as some of the major Kentucky distilleries, but they're still pumping out a lot of bourbon and rye, as well as gin, which I'll kind of touch on a little bit later. And so, I think they have something like 5,000 barrels currently aging in their warehouse, which is a huge number. Some of these smaller distilleries, we're talking 200-300 barrels, and they're in the thousands range. So pretty impressive operation for sure. And about their rye, so these barrels were a little over 4 years old. I think one was like 4 years and 2 months, and one was like 4 years and 4 months. And they use it's more of a high corn mash bill, I guess you would say. So it's 60-20, or excuse me, hold on, that's the bourbon mash bill. No, actually, so they don't use corn in their mash bills. I was reading the bourbon mash bill. So it's 75-25 rye to malted barley, which is a pretty interesting mash bill. You don't see a lot of that. You either see like the really high rye or they're adding in some corn. So it's definitely an interesting mash bill to see. And I'm going to open this bottle fresh because my other bottle I ended up sampling out. So this is one where whenever, they were kind of debating about what to do with the barrels, and there were a few that they liked and definitely like this blend, and I tasted the blend and I was just like, man, this is incredible. Like, hopefully be able to talk Driftless Glen into allowing them to do it, and they did, so that's great. So it is available on Seelbach as well. I'll put the link in the comments because I had planned on doing these reviews next week because there's the blend of two barrels pick, there's a single barrel rye pick, and then there's a single barrel bourbon pick. And now the single barrel rye pick is gone. It actually sold out already. And this one's down to I think it was like 25 bottles last time I looked. So it's going really fast, and the bourbon I think is down to like 30 bottles. So I wanted to go ahead and get a review in before it was all sold out because I wanted to talk about Driftless Glen a little bit because they're definitely an exciting one. So I'm going to jump on into it. So take a second to get my notes together. So the initial notes, it's got some sweetness. It's 123 proof, so I'm going to let it air out just a second. And there's baking spice there. There's a little bit of like a green apple note. While I'm waiting or kind of reviewing it, in the comments, has anybody had other bottles from Driftless Glen? Any thoughts on them so far? I'm getting a little bit of spearmint. It's really nice. Yeah, the taste is just it's like a thick, like caramel apple, almost like a maple note. You get a little bit of the oak on the finish, which is nice, but so they're actually going into 25-gallon barrels, which is surprising. I think they can get away with it because they are up in Wisconsin. So while they do get temperature changes, it's not quite the heavy heat where you see, some of these guys using smaller barrels. It just gets so oversaturated with the oak and really just way too tannic. Driftless Glen is able to get away with it, actually. Um, there's really no greenness to it. And granted, we're starting to see a lot more believers in some younger whiskeys. Anyone who drinks New Riff knows that bourbon can be good at 4 years, as well as some others. Finger Lakes Distilling, they've put out a lot of good younger products. Um, it's not. There is some spice. It's a little bit of baking spice, but it's really like heavy fruit notes. So I'm picking up a lot of that, like the green apple, caramel apple, a little bit of cherry note in there, and almost like a melon in a green tea note on the finish, which is really interesting. So this barrel, or this bottling, because it's technically a small batch well, not technically because there's no such thing as small batch, but it is a small batch because it's a blend of 2 barrels, but it is really good. I mean, if you're looking to kind of step out with a different craft distiller, this is a good place to go with. If I always hate to do this with craft distillers, but to compare it to like a counterpart at a larger major release, you're looking at more of like a Pikesville, something that's not overly spicy and minty and that kind of stuff. It's more fruity and caramel, and so really good to see. Not a ton of marzipan or juicy fruit in this one. I do love a good juicy fruit nose in the in a rye, but so like I said, I don't want to hype this up, but there are only a few bottles left. I think last time I checked, it was like 25-ish. And then I'll put in the link for the single barrel bourbon as well, because that one was down around the same range. So I do want, if there are some Bourbonr readers in the Facebook group that want a bottle, I want you to have a chance and not, see me post about it later and think, well, I wish I would have known. So I'm going to go ahead. I put that link in there as well. They also have, which is really interesting, a brandy. So they source a cognac um, from France, obviously, and they bring it to the distillery at 4 years old. Then they put it in used bourbon barrels and let it age for another year, which is really cool. You don't see a lot of that. I guess I don't know how they have to label that because you can't call it cognac because it's now in the States. So they just label it as a brandy, as well as a barrel aged gin. The barrel aged gin, they said, yeah, we're going for like a whiskey drinker's gin, and they actually nailed that one because there's a lot of spice to it, a lot of caramel, a lot of vanilla, and so from a cocktail standpoint, I don't know what you do with that. I've put it in a Negroni, and it's pretty good. It's not like it's not a dry gin by any means, and but it's really good as well. So if you're interested in checking that out, you can. But that's going to pretty much wrap up this review. If you have any questions, feel free to go ahead and put it in the comments. And that was a quick one. Yeah, I planned on reviewing the entire lineup, but then the bottle started dwindling down today. So wanted to at least get the review of the First Marriage out there. And I'll probably go ahead and post my reviews for the bourbon and the gin and the brandy as well, but just do those a little bit later. So thanks for watching.